Mike, now you clicked on yourself, editing the appearance, not that. On the chair. No right click, left click on the chair. I know this is couldn't be more complicated, but so right click to sit and then click it again, but not right, left to adjust. All right, welcome everybody. This is the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and today is our free-for-all, as we call it, where we have no guest, but everybody in the audience is a guest, and everybody on YouTube as well. So, as usual, I'm going to keep an eye on the YouTube chat as well. Today there is a theme though, and the theme is a fellow by the name of Michael Brooks, and I would like the camera to maybe cam over a little bit on the side here. There is a big real life selfie that I took with a Michael Brooks T-shirt, and this was made by the Letter Hack. Now, who was Michael Brooks? Please excuse me or us if you're non-American, and some of this stuff seems to you American specific because Michael Brooks was an American. Michael Brooks was also a dedicated internationalist. He always spoke in international context, in the importance of international solidarity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who was Michael Brooks? Michael Brooks was the co-host of The Majority Report. He was the host of his own left progressive podcast, The Michael Brooks Show. I think we should think of Michael Brooks as a public intellectual, quite frankly, along the lines of Cornel West, somebody who he admired, somebody who he interviewed. Michael Brooks would probably self-classify as a democratic socialist, although we can discuss this. He was an author. He wrote a book that I will read from a little bit later called Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right. He was, frankly, the best interviewer on the planet. He was so well prepared. I have no idea how he was so incredibly knowledgeable about everything that was going on the planet. But he was also an absolute comedic genius, somebody who came up with incredibly intricate impersonations on the fly, very, very multi-layered impersonations. For example, Nelson Mandela, but as if he were a right-winger. Obama, as if he was, in fact, a secret Muslim agent in the White House, something that a narrative that was put forward by a lot of Republicans in America. And we'll play a lot of these clips a little bit later on. One of my favorite ones is anti-social justice warrior MLK Jr. Yeah, we'll get to that. I personally was just always completely floored about Michael's kindness, about his intellectual rigor. He was also a very spiritual person. He was very much against the new atheist movement. Sam Harris was one of the people that he despised. So if you have no frame of reference of these people that I talk about, don't worry about it. We're going to get into who Michael Brooks was and why he is important and why the legacy of his work is important. Again, the tragedy of his passing 2 years ago today, at the age of 36, it is just a great loss. And as has been pointed out by many of his friends and many of his admirers, he was just starting to get started, quite frankly. I mean, the talent, just amazing. Anyway, I guess maybe we should start with I don't know if we should start with some comedy, but I'm going to just no, actually, I'm going to just put up this slide here. So if the camera can pan over, this is Michael Brooks, 1983 to 2020. Just tragic. But well, we're here to celebrate. And if you, by the way, if you want to chime in, and I know Mike Watson here is in the audience. He knew Michael, or he knew of Michael, his work. They both published with the same publisher, Zero Books. If people want to chime in, we're in voice today. So you know, just rudely please interrupt me or put a little ping in the local chat. Somebody apparently asked Shyla, "Hey, I was at the book club and I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how to get a word in edgewise because Drax talks all the time." And Shyla advised this person correctly, just interrupt him, okay? just interrupt. Just interrupt. Don't feel bad. So, I guess we should start with some comedy. Andy Kindler, who was a big admirer of Michael Brooks, one of the great stand-up comedians in America right now, said about Michael, "The thing I never realized was how much he laughed and how much he laughed from his soul." And I think that is really the essence of brilliant comedy. So I'm going to play something where you also hear Michael laugh. And this is, in fact, a clip where he, I think, originated anti-SJW, social justice warrior, MLK Jr. Now, this originated, quick backstory, when an ad for a car, for a Dodge Ram, was played on the Super Bowl halftime commercial break. Now, these are expensive ads, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s estate, that owned the right to all his audio recordings, made the decision to sell the rights to use this to Dodge, to use it for the ad. I personally think, or any MLK scholar, I'm sure agrees that since MLK was a socialist, quite frankly, he was a civil rights leader, but he was also a socialist. He was an anti-capitalist. He would have, or maybe he did roll in his grave. But again, I don't know. I don't own his rights. His estate did. Maybe they got $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 for these rights, and they can use. And they thought maybe we'll use that money for something else. We use that money for helping whoever. That's a legitimate, decision. It's not my decision, but I think a lot of people thought like this is a super sellout. And what Michael did when they reported on this ad, he went, this is important, Michael went into a completely improvised riff, as if MLK was in fact the biggest capitalist on the planet and would have no problem selling anything for money. And so here we go. We're going to start here. It's going to come out of the radio here. And the sound starts with the co-producer, I think, saying something like, "Oh, I wonder what happened, how the conversation went between MLK," or if somebody asked MLK if he were still alive, why did he sell the rights? Here we go.
I'm just imagining them like when Ram came to them, like, "We really want to use one of your father's speeches.
If you can buy a Ram truck 4x4, global warming, fuck that. It's a Chinese hoax. I'm trying to get this cash money, motherfuckers. People have a problem in my estate using my words for a Ram ad. Well, it's like you can't say anything anymore on TV elsewhere, Joe. People are joining the alt-right because my words won't be used for Ram ads. I have a clear message for them. Suck on this." Everybody Anybody can be a servant leader. You just got to get a good pre-financing plan. Car used to be like getting a house before the bubble. You probably don't even need to qualify. Head down to your dealership today. Hey, here's an idea, fellas. Remember how Volkswagen lied that it had clean diesel and really it was just a scam system to beat the regulators? Why don't you tell everybody that Ram trucks run on hydrogen? It'll take them years to find out. And you can get some dumb hippie saps to buy it. Oh, that's not your core marketing demo? Let me try this. Black people, stop complaining. Turn off the rap music. What's with this hatred for Mr. Trump? He's not racist. He's racial. Omarosa explained it. Victoria's Secret. It's the only brand for loving. Dodge Ram, service, Nike athleticism, all-terrain vehicles. Apple's for the creative. You can literally establish your entire identity through brand associations. Nothing else is required. Capitalism's a hell of a drug.
Hopefully we don't get sued by the King family.
I don't. Hey, none of this is original language.
So that's Michael doing again an off-the-cuff impersonation, not only of Martin Luther King, but basically as if Martin Luther King was, very, very much a textbook capitalist, capitalizing on brand recognition and on defining himself over branding. And you were also able to hear his infectious laughter. Now, one of the things that Michael was very adamant about was the danger of the intellectual dark web. I was going to ask, like, class, please raise your hand if you know what the IDW is. Can you define the intellectual dark web? But this is not school, and nobody's raising their hands. I guess the hand-raising animation is not available. And Mike Watson is standing here in the corner, looking at the corner. I know that Mike Watson can define it. Mike Watson, can you hear us? Can you define the IDW?
Can I even speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you just fine.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can't define it probably as well as you can, but it basically means the intellectual dark web. And it's kind of a group of people prominent on the internet who are aligned with the right wing, like Sam Harris. I guess Jordan Peterson is in there. And Michael Brooks was very pivotal in dismissing their arguments, and that's a lot of what his book Against the Web was about.
Right, and thank you, Mike. And actually, I'm going to read the first 2 pages of Against the Web, because here he actually defines also where the term came from, and I didn't know this either. So this gives our non-American or non-IDW privy friends, and consider yourself lucky that you don't even know who these people are. I think you're probably better for it. But so I'm going to read chapter 1 from the Against the Web. Meet the New Right, the intellectual dark web and capital's contradictions. Everyone is preoccupied by how the online world is shaping politics. The left and many liberals have been deeply concerned with the right's fluency on platforms ranging from YouTube to Instagram to Twitter, and their ability to use these platforms to push their messages and create an overall political narrative. With authoritarian right-wing governments holding power from the United States to Brazil and Hungary to India, the need to understand and overcome these forces is urgent. This book focuses on the intellectual dark web, IDW, a group exercise in collective self-branding that may already be by the wayside. However, this is interesting that he wrote that. When did that book come out? 2019? Let me check. Because I don't think they're by the wayside. 2019, there we go. He was hoping, it was wishful thinking. However, the tactics, ideologies, and arguments used by this group remain relevant for understanding the broader center-right and right-wing ecosystem and the absolutely necessary changes that the left must make to tell its own more appealing and dynamic story. The IDW is a group of men that Barry Weiss introduced to the world in a 2018 New York Times profile titled Meet the Renegades of the Intellectual Dark Web. According to Weiss, The IDW was a group of maverick intellectuals who, feeling locked out by a relatively new and culturally dominant political correctness, came together to speak truth to the power of the liberal consensus. According to Weiss, the group was quickly taken up by a public hungry for free thinking, and it is certainly true that the two most prominent members, Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, were filling auditoriums with admiring fans. By the end of the year, when Amelia Lester called the online magazine Quillette the voice of the intellectual dark web in Politico, everyone likely to read such an article was well familiar with the IDW. This is how Weiss introduced the IDW in her original piece. Here are some things that you will hear when you sit down to dinner with the vanguard of the intellectual dark web. There are fundamental biological differences between men and women. Free speech is under siege. Identity politics is a toxic ideology that is tearing American society apart. And we're in a dangerous place if these ideas are considered dark. Showing a stunning lack of historical awareness, this is Michael again writing, and by the way, the IDW's stunning lack of historical awareness will be one of the major themes of this book. The subjects of the profile informed Weiss that a decade ago, when Donald Trump was hosting The Apprentice, none of these observations would have been considered taboo. In reality, both the groups claim to be a persecuted minority, and their depiction of the left as censorious and dominant were hardly new accusations. The conservative framing of American politics around a perceived culture war dates back to at least 1951. And here Michael goes into important historical context I don't want to gloss over, but I'm going to skip this section because I think it's important to understand that this is not only an American phenomenon, it is a global phenomenon. And I'm going to read one more paragraph. So is the IDW just a rebranding of old-style cultural conservatism? Not exactly, although you might be forgiven for thinking so when you notice that Ben Shapiro is an IDW member. Shapiro is a religious conservative who believes that Palestinian rights can be disregarded because, as he says in one YouTube clip, God gave Israel to the Jewish people. In the video entitled Ben Shapiro, Why Jews Vote Leftist, a young Shapiro expresses amazement and disgust that most American Jews don't share his beliefs. Like any good fundamentalist, Shapiro is firmly opposed to letting women control their own bodies. He invariably refers to abortion as killing babies. He regularly speaks out against open borders, gun control, socialism, even redistributive taxation. In 2003, 2 years after a teenage Shapiro began writing as a nationally syndicated column, he used it to cheer on the invasion of Iraq. Shapiro could be grouped together with Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity as naturally as he is with his IDW comrades in arms, Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. So here I'm going to end here. Again, these are a lot of names that may not be familiar with folks outside of America, but the people that he mentioned are incredibly influential people with primarily on YouTube, but also other channels, and they have millions and millions of views, sometimes daily. Jordan Peterson is even, or has done, I think, a European tour where he did fill stadiums talking his anti-feminist, anti-trans stuff couched in strange mythological things. Anyway, so this was one of Michael's big projects, was to kind of educate people about the danger of what the right is doing here and the effectiveness of what they're doing in terms of the knowing the platforms, and in the book then he goes also, of course, into how the left should respond, and I'll read about that later. Arden Schwartzman, Judy Lynn, thank you for checking in on YouTube. Arduin, will you do his Obama impression? Oh yeah, let's go to the Obama impression, says Arduin. Arden also says Jordan Peterson is the new Jim Baker. Arden also says the new right, or the center left, as Tim Pool likes to call it. Yeah, Tim Pool is another one that is, I don't think, mentioned in this book, but Tim Pool, I believe, is probably one of the most dangerous ones. And again, we're talking about people that Michael Brooks was sort of exposing, people who have tremendous reach with young men, primarily young men who are, as many young men, including myself, have gone through a phase of confusion, of finding your identity. And so there is this plethora of propaganda out there on social media, in games as well, where nefarious actors and grifters are picking off people who are sort of on their own. Jordan Peterson does that also in book form with a book, 12 Rules for Life, that sold, I guess, several million copies, right? Where he basically says your life is shit because your mother is a woman and she makes you do stuff, but you should clean your room and stand up straight. And then he talks about his grandmother's pubic hair. So these people are disturbed, to say the least. People go like, "What? What did Jordan Peterson talk about?" I'm not going to get into it. You look it up online. Now, since Arduin has requested this, and Arduin's my good friend, let's play Nation of Islam Obama, another spontaneous Michael Brooks impression. And of course, that comes from the belief, I guess, sometimes genuine belief, but also a little bit of a grifting exaggeration by the right wing that Obama, or method to discredit Obama, that he is in fact a secret Muslim in the White House, trying to implement Sharia law and enslave everybody in a fundamentalist, every American, enslave them in a fundamentalist authoritarian way. Surprise, surprise. Obama didn't do it, but the other team is getting pretty close. So here we go. This is a short clip. Nation of Islam Obama. Michael Brooks.
My fellow Americans, look, in light of the new discoveries on Mars, in addition to the water, we found a graveyard. Apparently, this civilization on Mars had deviated from the one true and living religion of Islam, leading Allah to punish Mars and destroy that civilization. We now know with absolute scientific certitude that if we do not implement Sharia, our planet will flood. Next step, these crackers always call it. It's never the liberal MSNBC sissies like Chris Hayes that are on the ball. It's always some guy in Virginia who's like, Muhammad's coming. That kid didn't really build a clock. They're on it.
Yeah, that was a short clip. I mean, just hilarious. And again, like pretty much spontaneous. I'm not sure if he developed that one more than Right-Wing Mandela. I know for a fact that Right-Wing Mandela was a spontaneous creation. Now, I already forgot if I said this on the onset, that when Michael passed, there was an outpouring of tens of thousands, according to Sam Cedar, who is the main host of the Majority Report, tens of thousands of people expressing how what Michael meant to them. Again, we're talking about people, men, women too, but young people, between the age of 16 and maybe 25. Michael Brooks had an incredible influence on, again, this demographic that are so vulnerable in an ecosystem where the right, the alt-right, new right, light, whatever it is, it's all the same to me, has this outsized influence in propagandizing people who are looking for solutions. One of the things that Michael did, and for me, it was also expressed by a lot of the people who the outpouring of love for him when he passed on, was the exposure that Michael gave to people that I did not know, right? By just interviewing them and putting them on the show. So maybe the camera can go to the camera's already trained on the board here. By the way, Stranger says, welcome, Stranger. Stranger says, what a terrible loss. By the way, thank you for coming, everyone. Bo Venus, Isabel, of course, Monkey, Flenza, Sigmundo, Bunny, Jessica, Mike Watson, Jared the Bot, and Stranger, Shiloh, of course. Stranger says, for one thing Michael would do is talk about his spirituality. Stranger, thank you for bringing this up. And if you want to type more about that, I'll bring it up, because this is actually important, that Michael was very, very spiritual. And there is an issue with the left embracing, I think, I'm not the only one who thinks that, but I think there is, let's just put it this way, the left is not very good in expressing that it respects religious motivation for doing good, right? The left and the progressive movement at large often comes across as having a disdain for religious or spiritual motivation, or sort of a deep tradition of religion, because they associate it with fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is not all people who are self-classifying as religious or spiritual are fundamentalists in any religion, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, right? So, and Michael was able to articulate that better than anyone. Maybe Cornel West is also pretty good at that. Speaking of Cornel West, I was just wanting to mention the people that Michael introduced to the world. Here's Cornel West. If you want to get a glimpse of Michael as an interviewer, just look up the interview with Cornel West. Just an amazing interview, and also these are sort of living legends of public intellectual thought that also expressed their admiration for this young fellow, right? That wore an Adidas tracksuit many times. Actually, today it's so hot here that I'm not wearing my Adidas tracksuit in honor of Michael, I have to admit, in real life. So Cornel West is somebody who I was, for example, familiar with a little bit, but Michael's interview deepened that. Here's somebody who I was not familiar with, Adolf Reed Jr., just an amazing activist, labor activist. His books, Class Notes, is probably one of the books you want to pick up. So these are people who are very well known in academia, in these circles, but Michael brought them to the YouTube audience, right? He opened the door and he introduced this thought to so many people in a very unpretentious, very non-elitist way, in an accessible way. This is also obviously a problem that the left sometimes has, where they tend to talk down to people. Am I right, Mike? I'm referring to Mike as a fellow Zero Books published author. Mike, you can also just type into.
I can speak as well. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, what's just been said is very important. This thing of Michael Brooks talking about spirituality and it being okay to be spiritual, and he meant in the broadest sense. And I think that there's two things you're dealing with it. I think one thing you're dealing with is the left's kind of natural disdain for religion, which comes down from Marx.
Right.
This idea that religion is the opium of the people. And then you're dealing with just the kind of, the problem society has in general with spirituality today, the kind of sense that we've lost our way. And a lot of the people we know on the left and the people in our wider kind of circles, what you might call the online left, podcasters, meme makers, etc.
Right.
They are kind of lost, and they're lost in a way similar to the way me and you are lost, Draxtor, in that they're seeking meaning and they're seeking reward and they're finding it.
What do you mean I'm lost? I found everything in Ice-T's latest album. Anyways, go ahead.
That's good.
That's a good album.
They are like anyone. They're finding temporary satisfaction through likes on Facebook, on Instagram, etc., through audience numbers, and they do. I think many of us, whatever, do need to kind of reconnect with ourselves and our position in the world. And Brooks was pushing that, and no one's really touched that since he departed us. People have stepped into his shoes, but no one stepped into his shoes and talked about spirit. That's kind of evaporated. So I think it's probably the most important thing he said in his book, but something that's often lost. But I don't know what you actually asked me. That's something that I just had on my mind.
No, this is perfect. Very well put. And I think at the end, I'm going to read the sort of little bit the prescription beyond the IDW, and I think there's something of that in there. How did he? Do you think, Mike, also that one of the fact that he was so situated in his spirituality, and I don't want to go into detail because frankly I don't I'm not an expert in how he defined his own spirituality, but my sense is that he was able to connect with so many different people, even people who were somehow, adversaries in like a one-on-one conversation. That there was just a different way he engaged with them in a patient way. It was just completely remarkable. And sometimes I wonder. Of course, he was always well prepared. He was incredibly good with his arguments, the way he constructed them. He just had knowledge and historical facts that he could sort of, hit you over the head with. But he also had a calmness about him, like a Zen-like way.
I mean, he just had a very open attitude. I mean, I didn't actually work with him in any sense, but it's very clear that he, whilst he was materialist, and he argued from materialist vision, he was kind of pro-spirituality. And that whilst he was anti-identity politics, he was very into internationalism. And then, whilst he was anti kind of alt-right, he was able to hold a conversation with these people, or at least give, at least talk to them to some degree on their own terms. So he says at the end of his book, somewhere towards the end, he says that we shouldn't dismiss, the things that drive people towards Peterson. So people go towards Peterson,
right?
Because
the reason why they go towards him, right? What is missing in their lives.
Yeah, they lack a meaning in their world. I mean, he literally defines it. They lack a spiritual direction, and we as the left, we can't prosper if we just dismiss that as something stupid. But the other one, that he was communist but not anti-middle class. He said we need to build a communism with everyone. We shouldn't just be kind of laughing at bourgeois people. So I mean, he was able to connect across all these different divides, and this didn't seem like he was out for himself. He was able to broadcast, but seem like he was. He was as much out for the little person, woman, man, whatever. I didn't want to say little guy because it sounds kind of like I should be saying little woman and man, or whatever. That's not even worse.
Well, it's also little furries. I mean, we have also dragons here in the audience, so we don't want to be anti-species.
The little things, beings in the world. He was up for elevating them, and that's so rare in our realm of broadcasters. People kind of they give lip service to wanting to promote the little beings, the people who are out there. But he really did in a way that was clear, and very few people did that. Mark Fisher did that to some degree, but didn't quite have Michael Brooks' delivery. But that's not to try and make a competition between Michael Brooks and Mark Fisher. That would be absurd. But he was another one, Mark Fisher, who I'm not sure if everyone is aware of him, but another person who published with Zero Books, who sadly departed us in 2017. Who really interacted with unknowns over the internet since the blogging period, since the early 2000s, and he would elevate people who had no standing. But these people are often the exception, and too many people are taking advantage of the the media we have at our disposal, podcasting, memeing, etc., just to push themselves. So we're all becoming broadcasters. Yeah.
Let me jump in. This is really well said, and I just want to make a clear, Mike. Thank you. That what you're touching upon is, I think, extremely important. So we have all this sort of democratizing of media platforms. YouTube, you can put your YouTube channel up, you can put your message out, and Michael was somehow able to be actually quite the hustler, if you will, pushing his show. We were friends on Twitter, and he was constantly doing, not constantly, but he was relentless in the best possible way. But you never had the feeling that he was pushing something for his own sort of whatever narcissism or grifting. It was always the cause. He was convinced about the mission, and he wanted the best possible, the largest possible platform for the mission. And he wanted to widen that platform, and that requires self-promotion. That requires certain branding that you may have disdain for as an anti-capitalist, but you have to do it in order to put this out there. And there is, like Mike, I agree with you 100%. There are a lot of well-meaning left progressives out there doing media, but none was so able to convey that they were not out for themselves. There's always like this little portion where you go like, is this person maybe a little bit out for themselves? Anyways, I want to acknowledge Monkey. Maybe you can put the link to Mike's appearance on the book club here in the local chat as well. Monkey says, Brooks and Spirituality, Michael Brooks and Joshua Summers, the Buddha's Playbook, Strategies for Enlightened Living, says Monkey in the chat. The book shares Michael's vision for the connection between inner spiritual work and outer social change, between the cultivation of awareness, compassion, and empathy, and how those qualities integrate with societal transformation. Obviously, with Michael, also with his, I think hatred is probably accurate for Sam Harris, one of those, frankly, despicable grifters. Look him up if you don't know who he is, and then close that browser and take a shower. But the new atheist movement was something that I think also had an impact on the progressives' brain, because there was some cognitive dissonance between them having to realize that the new atheists are really not good people in the moral humanitarian sense, but as the left also from a Marxian tradition may think that religion is opium for the masses, so they didn't know where they would stand. But anyways, I'm getting too much into the weeds. Another person that I got to know through Michael was Harvey J.K., a great author. Please do check him out. I don't know if we have links. That will be great. Harvey K. wrote a great book about the radical tradition of America. And I think now it's time to play another. What did we already play? We played. Did we play Right Wing Mandela? We played Nation of Islam Obama. Oh, here's a little slide. This is Right Wing Mandela. This is from the Majority Report. Make South Africa Great Again. Paying homage to Michael's concoction there. And before we play the next clip, here are some slides, some pictures from Michael and Sam Cedar in their April Fool's show, where they lampooned a right-wing talk show. And this is quite funny. It's the Kenny Ken show, the KKK show. Two completely clueless right-wingers just talking crap. And Michael and Sam have said many times that the reason for this concept was they wanted a break. They're doing a daily show, and they wanted one break per year, April Fool's. So they realized, wait a minute, if we do a right-wing parody, we don't have to prepare anything. Because they don't prepare anything, it's all just immigrants and culture, SJWs and trans people who are ruining our planet. And these are really, really hilarious and also showcase Michael's comedic talent. Now, I want to play the next clip. And this is Michael making fun of a YouTube personality by the name of Jimmy Dore, who I find quite dangerous in the grifting sense. And here Michael concocts a persona that has a show called Rage Against the Corporate Sellout Hour. And you will hear that his obsession here in this show form, in this parody, is the corruption in the DNC. So nothing else matters. It's just the corruption in the Democratic National Committee and Congress, and that's all that really matters in a very, very sort of lazy, unrigorous intellectual way. So I clipped this. This is pretty hilarious, and you will hear co-host Sam Cedar as AA Seaman calling in from Skype. Here's another clip from that video. And you also hear Michael break up a little bit because it's just too funny. And here's the clip.
Welcome back to the Rage Against the Corporate Sellout Hour. I'm Donnie Bruce. With me, as always, is Todd Snowflake and the Mopey Progressive. Got a lot to get to today, but of course, for the special power hour, I got to first warn you, you're about to enter caution. You're about to enter a no fucking sellout zone. And joining me via Skype, he's a journalist. He's a guy who's also recently, we're going to talk about in a minute, he's getting smeared a lot by so-called progressives. I call them faux fucking aggressives because they're not, and they promote war. AA Seaman is with us from Skype.
Thank you, Donnie. I just, as you know, I'm a journalist and an editor and an author and a radio personality, producer and an auteur, showrunner, a certified public accountant, day laborer too. And a homemaker. I also do some search engine optimization and as well as solution coordinator and a content strategist, the user experience magistrate.
So AA, you do so many things, but
Yeah.
one of the things we know you for is exposing the corruption of the DNC. You go on a lot of different outlets to talk about the corruption of the DNC because, as we know, Bernie Sanders was going to win the election. He didn't blow the fire alarm, so they stole it, and now Donald Trump is president. But yesterday, or last week, I should say, you were on a show. I don't listen to this show. Apparently, it's called The Eternal Jew, which I guess is kind of a weird name for a show. I don't know. I don't listen to it.
We're all on the same side, and we have to be able to make those type of alliances, or we're not going to end war.
Right. And then they say we should work with Rachel Maddow, even though she's calling for war every single night. And then you go on and then you say, oh, well, the Pittsburgh shooter was used to be a patron or whatever the fuck of the show you were on. But then people will say that. I say it's the narcissism of small difference, whether you're saying police shouldn't shoot you if you're Mexican at the border, which we don't like, but maybe also you believe in the protocols of the elders of Zion, but we can come together because we don't want fucking corruption and war, and now they're smearing you for it.
Well,
So I just want to pause it here real quick because this is such a great example. This parody is such a great example of how easy it is to create a YouTube grifting operation. I mean, this is what they're satirizing here. Is basically just convoluted, nonsensical baloney, just delivered with well, almost religious fervor, to rile up this outrage for a very, very narrow cause in the case of this parody, which is the corruption in the Democratic Party. But also, what Michael here is satirizing is this absurd call for alliances with right wingers because of this narrow issue. Again, this is like very much into the weeds. I don't expect anyone who is not absorbed with the political online feud between the new right and the left progressives to I think to know what the detail that I'm talking about. But I think that everybody will probably get the sense of what the persona is that Michael is satirizing here. Again, this is just someone who realizes that there are millions of young men. I'm repeating myself. This is really important to note because I think some folks don't understand where the danger of that influence. Of really nefarious ideologues and propagandists who are just relentless in confusing these folks even more. So here's another minute and a half to go for this one.
I just finished making a video
Sam.
where I commented on the video made by Jason over at the Inclusionary Revolutionary and the video that he made commenting on the anonymous unanimous dissent video, which of course was a comment on Left or Our Own Devices that Ken had done over there, commenting on the Fascist Fuckers video that was a critique of what Anna Kasparian said. And so people can see
Ooh, Anna
that.
Kasparian.
Yes, at my channel, AA Seaman at YouTube.
AA Seaman, it's just so important. We look at his videos if you want to understand what happened at the DNC. He's been top of it. There's another a coward on YouTube. He does a mini MSNBC show, and he wants Chris Hayes' job, but he stammers too much. And he's one of these guys that's always going on that, oh no, we need to stop Trump because of the Supreme Court. Guess what? You voted for Hillary, and you still got Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme fucking Court. How do you feel like a chump now?
All right. If you're sitting here in the audience, you're watching this and like, okay, I understand what the parody is, but who could just, not see through the type of people that they're satirizing here? Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks. Sam Cedar, the host of the Majority Report here, playing AA Seaman and being also satirized a little bit by Michael by saying like, okay, he can't get a job on MSNBC because he stammers too much. Sam does stammer a little bit here and there. But fact of the matter is that the people that they're making fun of here, these people do get 3 to 5 million views per day, and those are people from the so-called intellectual dark web, or whatever people call this group now. Broadly speaking, YouTube right-wing grifters. I want to read a quick excerpt here from Michael's book, Against the Web. And this is kind of what we're talking about here, but these are Michael's words. We heard a lot of comedy, but he, again, also was a very serious person. And this, I think, puts it pretty well. He writes, like everyone else, young white men are trying to muddle through life in a relentlessly complicated, unequal, and, to use one of Jordan Peterson's favorite terms, chaotic era. To begin framing the left's response, one must appreciate the degree to which Peterson is taking one of the biggest macro issues of our time and trying to solve them with the smallest self-help micro solutions. Again, who is Jordan Peterson? He's a psychologist from Canada who came to prominence because he was outspoken against the gender Nazis of his university that forced him to acknowledge different genders. And he now sort of elevated himself and made millions and millions of dollars as the guru of the fighting against cultural Marxism, whatever that is. But anyway, continue with Michael. Socialists can do better. We can start by analyzing the material roots of the uptick in alienation and despair that fuels Peterson's book sales. That doesn't mean telling people not to care about spiritual fulfillment or personal meaning. There we go. It's not an either or. The loss of stability experienced by so-called millennials and Zoomers, moreover, hasn't even been compensated by a meaningful increase in autonomy. Whether you're employed by General Motors or Uber, workplaces at the end of the second decade of the 20th century remain sites of autocracy. So in the book, he goes more into detail about that core dilemma of young people experiencing a loss of autonomy and compounding the problem of the very normal searching for identity, and people like Jordan Peterson with a degree in psychology as a psychology professor relentlessly exploiting this very vulnerable state by offering ridiculous solutions like cleaning your room and standing up straight. I have nothing against cleaning rooms and standing up straight. I think that's important. But the reason why people are alienated is not because they don't clean their room. It's a structural issue, and as Mike has pointed out, the lack of materialist analysis is just astounding. But Jordan Peterson makes millions by blaming blaming basically what he calls cultural Marxists. These are people who are woke people who like their models, their swimsuit models, a little not thin as they should be. This is another real thing that Mr. Peterson was involved with in the public eye, where he railed against Sports Illustrated because they put a plus size model on the cover. I'm not even kidding. I don't know if you guys are following this stuff. If you don't, again, congratulations. Consider yourself lucky, but that's what's going on out there. It is insane. Here's another quick excerpt about mythology, which is also important. It also references Peterson. Why am I harping on Peterson so much? The primary reason is because he has this intellectual veneer because he has a degree from a university in the field of psychology. So the right loves that kind of stuff. It's sort of their in-house intellectual versus some of the other people who don't have that pedigree. Michael writes that Jordan Peterson has a shaky grasp on history and Marxist theory is to be expected, but the Petersons of the world also want to mythologize the injustices we see around us instead of analyzing them. For example, instead of just saying that feminists or trans activists are a threat to traditional values, right? I mean, he now he says that actually, but oh, please don't put his website out there, Monkey. Please don't. We don't want to. People can find it, but I really don't want to elevate these hucksters more than they already are. I mean, this is we don't need to do that. Don't go to that website, folks. Go to Michael Brooks's stuff and just anyways, where was I? Instead of saying that feminists or trans activists are a threat to traditional values, Peterson will go on about the dragon of chaos. Similarly, he likes to accuse the left of having an incomplete view of the world because they see only the tyrant without understanding that he's forever bound together with the wise king. If you're interested in contemporary Jungian psychology, Carl Jung, okay, this is what Peterson always talks about, that, oh, I'm in this tradition, and then he just spouts this completely simplistic crap. You can do much better than Peterson. James Hillman is an archetypal psychologist who actually ran the Jung Institute in Vienna. He went on to co-author a brilliant book in the 90s entitled We've Had 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World is Getting Worse, that offered a number of incisive points about modern-day alienation. The book is called We've Had 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World is Getting Worse. Yeah, so just another little excerpt from Michael's book. Let's see. We have a few minutes left in the hour. We're going to cap at the hour, but I do have one more series. I have two clips. Do we want a series, Michael, on Israel-Palestine? Because this is a clip that went viral with several million views, and I'm really happy about that. This is Michael speaking or responding to a question that came from a audience member at, I believe, let me check this out, Mills College. Michael was speaking at Mills College. Oh, the Mills series, sorry. This was at, I don't have this in my notes. I think this might have been, the Mills series is at Lafayette. And where Lafayette is, please help me out. But I want to play this. This is really important. Michael is, of course, and he gets asked by this student, you know, aren't you Jewish? And then ask him about his take on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And here is Michael on that.
I was pretty connected to left politics, so I always knew growing up about the travesty that was the human rights situation there. And I knew that people I admired, like Nelson Mandela, said, you know, South Africa is going to not be properly free until the Palestinians are free. In 2006, I believe, I read a piece by a guy named Tony Judt in the New York Review of Books, who was a really important Jewish scholar. And he just said, if you're committed to any type of broad-based social, economic equity and civil society, it doesn't work. No matter how justified, right? Of course there's justification because of Jewish history for Israel. There's justification for Kurdistan because of Kurdish reality. There's justification for Pakistan. It's notable that Israel and Pakistan are both disasters. Israel not in the sense of, look, if you're a European Jewish background, you have a nice life there. If you're not, you are, even inside 67 borders, not a fully equal citizen. And the situation in the West Bank is, it is literally Jim Crow-like. And Gaza is, it's just an atrocity. So that's not something that anybody could reasonably ask me to support. Super simple. There's one group that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East, backed by the United States. It acts on another population of people with total impunity and is never held accountable for anything. So there's no symmetry in the relationship, period. And if we know that if somehow a population of Jewish refugees ended up in West Bank and Gaza, and an Arabic government in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv had an open air prison in Jewish Gaza, which they bombed with white phosphorus, they killed civilians indiscriminately, and they had no provisions for medicine. They had an embargo that blocked food, that the electricity wasn't running, that there was an over 48% unemployment rate, life expectancy and malnutrition statistics were horrifying. One of the major policymakers in this hypothetical Arabic Palestinian state said, we need to put those Jews on a diet. In the West Bank, there was another Jewish area where there was a little bit more autonomy, but there was regular Arabic settlements where they pulled up the Jewish farmers' foods. They terrorized them with rocks. The security forces broke children's bones, and they couldn't drive their own roads. We'd all have no problem understanding what that was. So there's nothing complex about it. And the question is rights or not. So that's it. It's not complicated. But thank you. Shalom. And I am serious about it coming from Jewish values. Like Tony Judd, my reading, to the extent I do, which I actually do have some connection to that in a religious sense, it's unacceptable for me.
So very important. This is obviously an issue that can kill a career of if you're a politician or whoever else. If you have if you express publicly a nuanced position or a position that very clearly puts the situation in Israel into the history of apartheid and name Israel an apartheid state in that way. And Michael was able to deliver this in a concise way with this young student at Lafayette. And thank you, Monkey. This is Pennsylvania. That is just admirable, and also in a like we talked earlier, in a non-confrontational way, which I am just admiring. I'm not able to do this. I had a contentious talk this morning with a guy who I met when I was walking the dog, and he was talking about economic inequality and how capitalism doesn't really work, and etc. And I just get really kind of pissed off, and I just can't keep my cool even in the most sort of casual conversations. But Michael was able to do that. Here's another quote that Shala pulled about him talking about, I don't support second-class citizenship. So it's not a complex issue. It's super simple. There's one group that has enormous power, the most powerful country, backed by the U.S. It acts on another population with impunity and is never held accountable. There's no symmetry in the relationship, period. That's it. So want to end with another slide here. One thing that Michael was extremely proud of was when he flew to Brazil and interviewed former President Lula da Silva, and Lula was ousted by, and I have to look this up. There's a was a corruption issue. And Lula was ousted and put under house arrest, and he's back out now, and he's actually running for president again, which I didn't know. But that interview with Lula is just absolutely amazing. Lula is a socialist, labor activist, He was a founding member of the Workers' Party, and in that interview, again, this is applicable to, in my mind, to what's happening in the world. You can see Michael at his best as an interviewer, but also Lula is also extremely concise and eloquent about the main issues of the day. So seek out that that interview. Yeah, we can open the floor, but I do want to wrap it up very soon. Let me see if there's anything. Oh, we do actually have another comedy bit, which we really have to check out. Because anybody here remember Ben Carson? I don't know. Americans? Hello? Anyone? Ben Carson? Dr. Ben Carson, I should say. Shyla remembers Ben Carson? Ben Carson was, I guess still is, a literally a brain surgeon who ran for president, conservative, African American conservative brain surgeon, neurosurgeon, and he was then under Trump. He was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and Ben Carson was came to prominence through as running president, but he also always seemed, frankly, in interviews and public appearances, not to be quite there. And people made fun of him. I don't like to make fun of people who are learning disabled or disabled in any way, shape, or form, because that's I consider that ableist or punching down. With Ben Carson, there's no punching down because he made despicable statements, and he punched down and probably still does quite a bit. So I think in my personal moral universe, it is completely okay to punch back against someone who has some unaddressed issues. Let's put it that way. Someone who is just, frankly, just a really problematic, espousing problematic views. This is hilarious. This is a 2-minute diss track where Michael riffs in a Ben Carson impression with beats underneath. So I hope you hear that. I hope we have good audio. And for the uninitiated to Ben Carson, what is really important to note is that Ben Carson came out in interviews many times telling the story that he actually stabbed with a knife. He stabbed a former friend of his, and he was involved in sort of street level violence as a youth. But then all that ended overnight. Now you take a wild guess how that ended in Mr. Ben Carson's, Dr. Ben Carson's story. It ended because he found the Lord. So another one of those stories where finding the Lord is solving every personal issue if you open yourself up to the Lord. And with Ben Carson was, and sure still is, effective for some in creating a myth of a crazy, violent youth that was saved by the Lord, which is the main selling point, I guess, of fundamentalist evangelical religion. Okay, so you're ready? I don't know if Ardern is still on the. Judy says a disappointment. Judy says clueless. Yeah, maybe we should call him clueless. But you know, Dr. Ben Carson also just said some very demeaning things. I mean, it's more than a disappointment. I mean, a disappointment, I think, implies that you had higher hopes for someone. I mean, Judy, you tell me. Please put it in the chat. Did you have high hopes just because he was black? I really do want to know. I know that it's you want to see yourself represented in your you know, your background, cultural background, but Mr. Ben Carson or Dr. Ben Carson, I'm not sure if he resides in the same class as at least as any black person that I know, they would say, I mean, he just by way of being a rich, affluent, successful person, he has very different interests. But besides that, this kind of conservative evangelical mindset that is so brutal and unforgiving, unless you find the Lord, is just the main problem. But anyways, enough talking. Here's the diss track. Enjoy this one. This is very funny.
A lot of people around here trying to pretend like they love the country when all they've been doing is hating it. Deceitful, lying liberal media. We all know that their transgender bathrooms are making kids addicted to crack. I was the only one with the courage to say this. I'm not a businessman. I am a businessman on multiple levels, like nanotech, bioglyconutrients, and they'll send me checks. Cause I'm blessed by God, which is why the media calls me a fraud. Just stop, or I'll stab you like I stabbed my friend when he turned down my tune and hit his belt buckle, so I ran to the bathroom. When I got there, I heard God in my head, so I locked the door, and here's what he said.
Joseph built pyramids to store the grain because the pharaohs had trouble making it rain. As president, this is what you need to explain. But first, take the scalpel to their liberal media brains.
To their liberal media brains. That's who I was before I found the divine light. Became a neurosurgeon. I was the type of dude that would attack my mama with a hammer and set her on fire before I found God. One time I suffocated one of my relatives until 10 people pulled me off of him, and people trying to pretend like that a lie. They're trying to act like my whole backstory was Rick Ross and he was a prison security guard, except this is all real. This ain't no Rick Ross. They can hate, but I'm gonna love what I love, and that's this country.
Yeah, Dr. Ben Carson, again, the same sort of tropes. I mean, I don't know if you got that. Transgender bathrooms are the reason for kids being addicted to crack. And again, he starts off with the thing about stabbing, but then he goes one further, upping the ante by claiming that one time he wanted to set his mother on fire, or he did, and then 10 people had to pull him off her before he found Jesus, and then he found Jesus and everything was okay. Again, Michael really catching the essence of this madness in his parody, in his satire, in his impersonation. Just absolutely awesome. I'm going to end with, I'm not going to read the very end, or should I? I can also actually end with this quote here, because this is a little bit of the prescription. There is no, I mean, Michael doesn't claim to have the silver bullet to solve everything, inequality and the international issues or global issues like the climate crisis, etc. But here he says in this excerpt, we should reject both the defense of traditional hierarchies and the misguided attempts of the ultra-woke to improve society by scolding people for holding imperfect ideas in their heads. This is really important. And I think that if this comes out of another part of the left, this would probably not be accepted, because people, he's also kind of anti-woke, and anti-woke people are right-wingers. No, what he talks about here is scolding people for really kind of small issues. People who might not be as eloquent as an academic or whatever, and then engaging in a fight on social media over the use of a word. And Michael was always very nuanced in differentiating between really bad faith actors who are sowing this outrage versus people who are who could be in your fold and open to your ideas, but that you're alienating because they are afraid to open their mouths for saying something wrong. Michael continues, wittingly or unwittingly, ultra-woke scolds feed a project of endless fragmentation and standpoint epistemology that, if relied on as a strategy for action, destroys any possibility for collective liberatory endeavor. At the same time, we need a path forward that rejects empirically baseless racial essentialism while avoiding the descent into tone-deaf economic reductionism. That's a mouthful. This is the only way we will move forward toward an equitable, compassionate, and truly global socialist future. Sorry, folks. This is a little dense. Got to read the book. But if you don't want to become a socialist, maybe you should call your local library and tell them to burn it. Just kidding. We will take over the world anyways. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. We can chat a little bit. Any final words? Does anybody want to say something? I do want to wrap pretty promptly, but if there's any other comments in the chat or in voice, please go ahead and do so. Otherwise, I will run the credits. And yeah, it's too hot today for this kind of stuff. And I don't have any more comedy clips either, but there's 4 hours of comedy. Kitten Duo, thank you so much for being here. I just want to acknowledge Kitten. She's on the chat. You support us so much. You know, please don't feel obligated of supporting us with money. We love that you're here and that you'll get something out of this. We love that you enjoy this on YouTube. We would love you to come in. I hope that happens one day. We'll have a seat for you. This was the Second Life Book Club Free for All edition, homage to Michael Brooks. We're here at 12 p.m. every Wednesday. The show is produced by Isabel Scheren, Shala the Super Gecko, and myself. Location manager, master builder, Ruby Geek. Avatars made by Ruby and Bespoke Caravan. Research by Shala the Super Gecko and Monkey. Lots of sponsors we have. You know the drill. Especially big thanks to Linden Lab. They're giving us 3 islands and maybe a 4th one very soon. Very important, slbookclub.draxtor.com. I already said this, but also don't forget to tip our volunteer staff. Tip the volunteer staff, I say. Have I tipped the volunteer staff? God, I have $400 Linden dollars left. Okay, I'll tip the volunteer staff. It says your contribution means a lot. That's very nice. Little tip jar. Thank you for coming in this small crowd. Next week, we have the last show before the summer break. And I don't have the slide on right now because I wanted to have that slide ready. And I don't have it ready. Let me actually find it while I'm riffing a little bit, because next week is the last show. And the guest is Lincoln Michel. Lincoln Michel comes highly recommended by a friend of the show, Jonathan Lethem, one of my favorite American authors. And Lincoln Michel wrote ostensibly a cyberpunk novel called The Body Scout. And yeah, whatever you think about cyberpunk. I know people say, hey, cyberpunk has been dead for years. There's nothing new in the genre. Forget about it. Well, no. There is people like Lincoln who can write like this. Come to the show. Here, Sammy says cyberpunk cool. There we go. That's the spirit. So there is, this genre is not dead because it's infused with people who have incredible power over their stylistic abilities, and there's always something fresh. And Lincoln, here he is. That's next week. Now this is the last show before the summer break. The summer break will be until mid September. Okay, so that means there is, and I know Kitten on the YouTube chat, she's like, oh, shite. Kitten, I'm sorry, but there will be no streaming. I will be hanging in world, but I will not stream. I will just be hanging out here. I'm also not doing a reading a club with like a scheduled reading because I put the word out so many times, and I apologize to the people who responded to this, but it's not enough people to do a structured reading. Frankly, I do need a little bit alone time. I need a lot of alone time. Actually, I enjoy my alone time, and there's a lot of projects that fell by the wayside. So I will announce what I'm reading, and if people want to read along with me, and then jump in here on Wednesday at the normal time and talk about where they're at, I will be announcing this. But there was just really no feedback. There were 8 people who responded to my multiple outreach about coordinating that. So, I work very, very long days, and despite what you may think of me, I'm honestly consider myself described as a loner. And that's maybe the type of balance that I need to recharge my batteries, because my job is so sort of outward facing, and my contracting job with Linden Lab it requires me, and I enjoy this, but it requires me to be constantly talking to people and interviewing people, listening to people, going through stories. And again, I love this, but for me to keep the batteries charged, I need to basically be alone and have total quiet time. So I have an abundance of socializing through my job, making the Second Life videos. I produce 5 videos per week. Not all of them require a big in-depth interview, but most of them do. So it's rewarding, but it's also exhausting. So, but like I said, I'll be here. Sammy, thank you. Oh, Sammy, is Sammy invisible? I don't see Sammy. Well, thank you for coming to the book club, Sammy. Pua is here. Eating people is a good change at times. I don't know. I don't know what Pua is talking about eating people. I'm not eating people. I'm not eating people just because I'm taking off. Things are slow in summertime, but I know that Bunny was responding to this little poll about the reading, and I believe Bunny was wanted to read the 3-body problem. So give me a couple of weeks. Let me announce next Wednesday if I'm going to read 3-body problem or something else. But there's really a list like of 20 people, 20 books that I have on my list. But I'm tending towards America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots to reread that one, because I read it is so transformative, and the first time I read it so fast because I wanted to get through it, and a second read is absolutely essential, especially with that one. Can I get a shirt like yours, Drax? That's a great question, Charlotte. The Michael Brooks shirt, you can click in the back there. It's $50 Linden, and because Arden made that, he can't give it away for free because the license of the T-shirt in Second Life requires that you have to sell it. But he will give those little Linden dollars to the Majority Report. So behind me to the left on the wall, you get that. Jessica's saying just finished Care of Wooden Floors by Will Wiles. Yes, that is a masterpiece. The Care of Wooden Floors is a fun masterpiece. Really, really cool. But yeah, where was I? Yes, so wrapping up, I'll announce next week the book that I'm going to be reading. I will not be streaming, but I will be hanging out here for the hour, or maybe a little over. Also, if you guys, I also will be off Twitter, by the way, and I'll cut that down significantly. It's unfortunately required also for my job as a Linden Lab contractor, because they look at me as an influencer, which is nice. I can do some good stuff, so I have to do certain things, but I'll be cutting that down significantly. And so the best way to be in touch is to be in touch through Second Life, direct message, group message, and hanging out here at the book club at the allotted hour. I feel bad for Kitten because she's not in world. So, but yeah. Thank you, team. Thank you, Isabel, for surviving the heat. And that's it. We'll see you all next week with Lincoln Michel. Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is not dead, but it smells sure funny. It's a Frank Zappa thing. Zappa didn't talk about Cyberpunk. He talked about jazz that way. That's a whole different story. We should have should talk about Zappa. He actually did write a book called The Real Frank Zappa Book. He co-wrote it. Bye.